Okay, passing directly over French Peak right now, more or less the same heading as we left off. I just went over back of us to the right, the Yucca Dry Lake and the airstrip and the support facilities. In front of us, we have the Frenchman Flats, the Frenchman Dry Lake right there with a couple of craters, another older, in fact, nuclear test site, and that means that we have a support road. Okay, there we go. You have the support road running all the way up to Mercury, Nevada, right there. That's the old Mercury base camp for supporting the test site. It's just called Mercury now, and that means that Highway 95 runs right up there. There's Charleston Peak, and that means that Indian Springs and Creech Air Force Base are right in front of us, and we're now getting into range 61 through 65. Now, unlike the 71 through 75, the 70 series ranges that we just came out of, these ranges we're approaching are more for day-to-day training operations. They still have some threat emitters available to simulate threats, but what I would imagine you would see out here is more just day-to-day qualification on different weapons and different aircraft and less tactical employment. So, let me see, that means that right here as we get into this rough terrain, this is range 65, running from right here up to the north, up to this area, and I can see out there, okay, yeah, we have these little light patches in the ground. These are targets right here, and also right up here we can see, as we get into this little sort of valley running up this little piece of terrain, more targets. So, tell you what, let me go ahead and roll in on some of these, and we'll see what we can resolve on the ground. Okay, so let me go HUD soy. I'll just pull up some, let me see, I'll pull up some rockets and just roll in on this target. Now, this would be an interesting location to employ something like rockets or gun on, because with all the broken terrain up here, you would see a lot more of the sort of idiosyncrasies that are associated with the calculation of the impact points. So I'm expecting the Pipper to sort of bounce around a little bit as I come up here and roll in, especially with the gun, and this would be a good terrain to, or a good area to practice for some like real world locations like Afghanistan. Some locations in Afghanistan would be very similar to what we see here in other locations around the world. So, okay, yeah, we can see more of the little lighter areas up here with the service road running up and some targets. Okay, that's a good spot right there. Let me go ahead and roll in with the rockets. And we'll see what some Willie Pete can do. Yeah, and let me see, I've got the rockets and the gun cross. Let me see if I can make happen what I was talking about. Yeah, see how the gun cross is just sort of popping around right there. It's not really, as we come down here, it's calculating an impact point, and as it gets into the different pieces of terrain, right there in particular, it's not really that obvious, but subtly it sort of moves around and it just does some strange things. Okay, so there's some Willie Pete going in on this location. I've got like a little, what is that? That's a little, no, I thought that was a structure there for a second, but it was just a dark spot. But yeah, these are where the range 65 targets would be, and they continue north. Now, just to the right of that, we have range 64 in this lake bed heading north out of Indian Springs and Creech Air Force Base. And in this area, generally speaking, the targets are going to be on the lake bed. So if I had to guess, I think right here, this little dark spot might be a good candidate. I can't really pick anything out from this distance, but I know they're there, and in fact, these run all the way up here into this light spot. So let me come around here and I'll fly by Creech Air Force Base real quick, and I'll be right back. We'll have a peek in here and see what else we can see. Okay, and here we go, as I'm established on a heading back towards Creech. Yeah, these little scrapes in the texture that we see there, those would be good target locations. We've got the straight line, meaning that could be a lead-in line. Actually, that's exactly what that is. That's a lead-in line for one of those nuclear weapons loft delivery targets that I keep talking about. I'll do a demonstration. At one point in my life, I knew exactly how these work. This would be like there's going to be an IP and then range markers going all the way up, and then you have, like right here, these little sort of lines right there, and then we have a pull-up point and a circular target out there at some point. I'll do a demonstration of the F-86 at some point, I'm sure. And right up here, right by this piece of terrain, is going to be the original range 3 and 4. This is where a lot of rocket and bombing practice during the Korean War, post-Korean War era was done. That's like a line. Yeah, there's a bombing target right there. That's like a line of, 16 bombs. So something did a ripple release with live bombs right there up to that target. I've got some more stuff scratched in right here, and more craters right out here. Neat area. And yeah, very old area, in fact. You see, that looks like it could have possibly is like a target holding area. Good location for it if I were laying this out myself, right there by the access road. So you have a storage point for your targets, and then all you have to do is just take them out there and set the targets up however you would like. And then we come up to Creech Air Force Base, and it kind of snuck up on me there. So as we come around here, we're flying directly over the RPA area for MQ-1 and MQ-9 operations. Well, not so much the MQ-1s anymore. Those are being phased out, thankfully, if you've ever been following RPA developments. So in the middle of the airfield, we have the live load area, got a couple of runways here, and then the main ramp right down here is where you would want to, if you were wanting to stage out of here with A-10s or whatever you're wanting to build your missions around, the main ramp right here would be a good place for fixed wing or rotary wing ops. And again, the center area for live load operations. I'm sure they have parking spots set up on this airfield in the DCS mission editor for that. So yeah, very neat. As we're right over Highway 95, big 4-lane highway in Indian Springs, and looking back there, I have these. That might be a little bit of giving Indian Springs a little bit more credit than it might deserve with those high-rise buildings right there. I think that's the high school, in fact, right there. And let's see what else we can see down here by the main base. There's a casino, like right here by the. I think it's actually further down the road that. Whenever I used to visit, I go to eat, and it's a long drive out here for the guys that work. They make the transit up here every day. It's about a 35-40 minute drive from Las Vegas to where the folks out here that work live. Nobody actually lives in Indian Springs other than, well, residents of Indian Springs, no offense, but most people who actually work on the base live in Vegas and just make the drive. And as you can see, it's a little desolate. There's not much to see, and I worry about people getting fatigued and falling asleep along this drive. I've heard stories of it happening, and I've made the drive several times myself, and I could perfectly understand how that could wear on a person and how that could be just such a pain. And as we come down here along the road, I'm coming down here at a low level. We have a detention facility, a little prison up here to our right, and we have a little rise in the terrain. That's what I was looking for, because as you're coming along the road and coming over this hill, you have like a perfect view up here into range 63, and that's the range that we're approaching right now. And you can even, before I knew that this place was a bombing range right out here off the road, you look out there and just tell that, okay, that'd be a good place to employ weapons on targets. You can actually see the target locations out there from the road. So as I come up here, we're getting into the original Las Vegas Bombing and Gunnery Range 1, which I believe the tower was right here at the end of this road, and then the targets were like spread out here on the other side of it. So I'll have to do some more research and start to build the mission, but the current bombable targets on range 63 are right here below us. I think that's one right there that'll etch into the terrain. And let's see what else we can see. I'll continue to fly up here because just to the north of this range, we have range 62, and that's Dogbone Lake. And if you remember, Dogbone Lake is the landmark that as we flew up the steep range, we looked in there and saw right up there on the horizon. So let me get up there, and I'll be right back. Okay, back with you. Same heading, coming up Dogbone Lake and range 62. Up above it, I'm not going to fly that far north, but up beyond this ridge, we have range 61 extending all the way up to pretty much the boundary of the Groom Lake airspace. And Groom Lake itself, we should be able to see right there. Yeah, there it is. I was guessing there for a second, but yeah, of course, that's exactly where it is, just north of these 60 series ranges. And my current steer point is going to be Quartz Peak that we see out there, and that means that this ridge is the boundary between range 62 and range 64 that we just flew down towards Creech Air Force Base earlier. And that also means that, let me see, it would actually be right down below me, wouldn't it? On this little pass, right down here is a landmark called Pintwater Cave. It's an old archaeological site dating back to between 9 and 3000 BC. It was excavated in the 60s, and studies were done. I have the report, I just haven't read it. It was done by one of the universities in California on the artifacts themselves, but yeah, that's where it is. And as desolate as this area looks, it was inhabited, oddly enough, long ago, before it became quite so desolate. So let's see, Dogbone Lake right up there, and I can see the leading lines for the targets. I've got a triangular airfield right there. I've got more stuff right up here. That's probably a target right there. Let me go ahead and take it out of autopilot, come down here and have a closer look. So we've got down here at the end of the road, this is probably like that's possibly a target holding area right there. The big sort of organized looking areas that have access roads going right to them are probably more target holding areas. I could be wrong. It's so hard to tell from the altitude and the textures. So let's see, another target right there for sure. And then on the lake bed itself, especially up here in the northern area, that's going to be another one. You have the line running up here, and I bet if we got closer, there'd be a circle right there for bombing. Looks like some more just sort of pock marks from impact craters right there. A good place for vehicles or targets of any type. So just a very, very, well, as all of this area is, a very, very neat area that we're on right now. And of course, just for context, let me see, there is the desert lake, or I think it's called T-Bird Lake right there along the Sally Corridor and Sheep Range. And that's exactly where we started. So let me turn a 180 right here, fly back down Dogbone Lake, head on that back out to Highway 95 and follow Highway 95 back around to Las Vegas. And then we'll think about landing this thing. So I'll be right back. Okay, coming back down towards the highway along, or within range 63. And I was on the way back to this point, just sort of looking at the textures, and I think what's happening here is that a lot of the little detail that you might see in overhead imagery has been sort of taken out just because these textures are based on satellite images, but they have been sort of hand painted and hand detailed, which is a good thing, don't get me wrong, but you might not find, like for example, I was sure that right here I would be able to see some bombing circles and some strafe pits. They're just not quite showing up, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. I think this area and just the entire range complex itself will start to come alive when static objects are added and more detail just in 3D terms start to stand out, and we're just not looking at strictly textures. And the 476, I almost said 379, 476 range objects are going to help out a lot here. They have circles, they have straight pits, they have anything that would be appropriate to bomb pretty much in this part of the range. They have as 3D type objects, so I'm going to have to give that a shot as we approach the highway, approach the detention facility, and looks like some little, for a second there I thought that might have been like a solar farm, but I think that's just sort of a like water reservoir right there along the highway. And then right on back out to Las Vegas, and my current steer point, it's a sort of navigation point called Strike, and I'm not going to fly any of the actual approach. I think I mentioned earlier, and I know in the video description I'm going to have links to airnav.com and maybe some other places with real-world navigation info so you can fly the real approaches back into Nellis, both visual and IFR type. I'm not going to do that here since, well, A, I don't have it in front of me, and B, I've been doing this for a while now, and I need to land. So, okay, passing Strike, or close enough for our purposes. I'm heading towards Apex, and this is the landmark that I'm going to use to set up on the approach. So coming around towards Apex is going to take us right over Gas Peak. So I'm just going to hold right here, and I think if I were flying this one for real, I would have come, I think it would have been, yeah, I kind of cut the corner there. Would have started a little bit sort of right out here, and it would have had us going straight over Gas Peak over to Apex. I'm just going to cut the corner and overfly this landmark. So if I fly straight at this steer point, it's going to put us in a position to just turn right and then be perfectly lined up for a landing back at Nellis. As we see the Paiute Ranch course, we see Las Vegas start right there, and the Vegas skyline and all the other good stuff to see. We have, let's see if we follow this back up here, another kind of interesting spot is called Red Rocks Canyon. It's just on the other side of this ridge. You have to go through Vegas sort of to get through it, or get to it, but a lot of good hiking up here, believe it or not. Take plenty of water, but there is very good hiking to be had. So we've got Lake Mead out there in the background, and there's Nellis Air Force Base right there on the other side of the ridge. So we're just going to fly on this heading and then come around for a landing. So there's the Sheep Range and the Sally Corridor, gas peak, all the good stuff that we saw on the way out. So let me go ahead and get a little bit closer, and I'll be right back.